In without him. If he's able to join us, then he will join us, and if not, we will continue without him. So we will call the meeting to order. And I would just like to begin by acknowledging the treaty territory of the Anishinaabe, which is defined within the pre-Confederation treaty known as the London Township Treaty of 1796. Throughout time, this region has also become the current home to the Haudenosaunee and the Lenape nations. And we are grateful for the opportunity to work on their land. I will next look for any disclosures of pecuniary interest. And I'm seeing none. So we'll move on to completion and acceptance of the agenda. Everybody's had a chance to see tonight's agenda. Any questions or comments? So we'll just look for a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda. Moved by Gary, seconded by John. And we'll just call that by hand vote. All those in favor? And that carries. Any opposed? Seeing none. So that's unanimous. Sorry, Melissa, I should have asked for opposed before I said it carries. Moving on, we have the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting of July 21st. Those, of course, were circulated in your package. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, then I'll look for a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Moved by Tammy and seconded by Adrian. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that carries. Item 6 on our agenda is communications. We have the communications from the City of London Council resolution, the appointments of directors. So I'd like to, at this time, first of all, welcome Phil Squire back to the board after a brief absence and a change of career for him, and welcome John Corby to our board. I don't know, gentlemen, if either one of you would like to say anything briefly, but if you would, as the chair, I'm going to indulge in the chair's prerogative to give you a minute if you'd like to say anything.
Yeah, I thought when I found out that Sean had replaced me as the council member and chair, I thought that was such a huge downgrade that I felt I should come back. And that's why I'm here.
And you are absolutely correct, Mr. Squire. So we're happy to have you back.
Thank you.
Did you want to offer any quick comments?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I postponed my departure time tonight to attend in person. You may hear my daughter in the background, but I'm really just happy to be here, humbled by the opportunity. Grew up in housing, a lot of frontline experience, hoping to bring my policy and strategic expertise to the table to help our community, and thankful for all of you and all the meaningful work you do. So just happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, I think I can speak for the whole board, gentlemen, when I say that we're happy to have you with us and look forward to working with you. I'm also going to take this opportunity, and we got an email from Ainsley just before the meeting came to order, just expressing her thanks for the opportunity to work with us. But I want to just take a moment to thank Ainsley Anderson and John Milson, our two departing directors from the board, for the stellar work that they've put in since we had to put an interim board in place. And it's been some heavy lifting by all members of the board over what's been a transition time. This marks a point where we are fully back now to a board that's appointed from the community at large, rather than with appointees from City of London staff. We certainly thank John and Ainsley for the work that they've done, but it's great now to have the board operating back in what would be a more normal situation for most of our boards, agencies, and commissions. So I did want to just take a minute to acknowledge all the hard work that they've put in over the last couple of years. So for the communications, we just need to receive the communication. So I'll look for a motion to receive the communication from City Council. That's moved by Gary and seconded by John. And we'll call the question. All those in favor? And look for any opposed. Seeing none, that carries. We have no delegations this evening, and we have no scheduled presentations. We do have quite a number of items on the consent agenda, and some of them are pretty important. So we'll start moving through these. We will deal with them, I think, one at a time, just for the sake of clarity, especially as we have new board members tonight. But hopefully everybody's had a chance to read them, and we can move through them pretty quickly. So the first item on the consent agenda is the staff report, number 47, the CEO's report. Paul, I'll turn it over to you for that.
Thank you, Chair. I had to unmute myself. Thank you so much. CEO report is getting a little smaller with the introduction of the committee structure and having the directors report directly through the committees on key areas of work. Two things to highlight from the CEO's perspective and bring to the board's attention. One is we have initiated community town halls across some of our sites. We have scheduled 9 through the month of August. 3 of them we've completed to date. It is great to be back speaking to tenants. With COVID, we missed that opportunity last fall, or I did for sure, and I think it's been a struggle just to sort of keep engaged with the tenants, see how they're doing, and hearing collectively what they'd like to see from us. So we've been taking that opportunity to make that contact, sharing a little bit about what we're doing, what's maybe planned for capital for their sites or things like that that impact them, but mostly hearing from them on what are the things that they'd like us to do better, what things they don't want us to change, and try to get a sense of their priorities. So not surprisingly, what we're hearing from our first few town halls is the issue of community safety, and making sure that we're focused on that for our tenants. And I think we were also hearing from staff that what that looks like depends on the building, who it serves, where it's located, and the issues they face. So really there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution on things like community safety. You have to really take it from what the tenants are experiencing in the community they're living in and work from there. The plan is to have these 9 meetings and then start branching out to some of the smaller sites and the family sites, which don't have the common rooms, and we'll be doing that through September and early October. We want to make sure we get to every site, have this initial conversation, committing to the report back to tenants on what we heard, and where there's follow-up required. On some of these sites, we'll be working either as collective, holding additional meetings, maybe on community safety, or working with smaller groups in the community on maybe programming for the site to sort of better identify that need. So we'll try to do a bit of focused response, but all of this will feed into our strategic plan, setting our priorities and setting our work plan for 2023. I think it's important that we base that on tenant feedback, and this is a great foundation. So really excited for that. We're learning lots, and we have another 6 meetings planned. The other thing that is a constant focus for us, and you've heard it a number of different ways, is recruitment and staffing. Others, we're struggling a little bit in terms of adapting our recruitment to the current economic reality and the employee kind of availability. We've been successful in a number of roles, have some folks starting in legal services. So, tenant services is starting to really get staffed up. We're starting to fill some of the management roles that we've been struggling with over the last 9 months, where we've had to do a couple of different competitions to get candidates. So those staff have been offered and accepted roles, and some of them have started. So we're really happy to sort of move some of those long-standing ones. Just note that we do have about 10 recruitments being managed at some stage of the process. Some we're just waiting for offers. Sometimes we're in second interviews. So there's lots of activity, lots of positive traction. And we're hoping to get our staffing set for the fall. Those are the 2 big areas. You're on mute, Sean. Mr. Joe.
should tell him he's on mute.
Sean, you're on.
Well, that doesn't help me communicate that we had other folks struggling to hear you through that, Paul. I don't know if your volume's a little low, ability to turn it up, but we had a couple people in the chat mention that it was a little muffled for them.
Okay, sorry, I do think I have a loose wire in my headset that I'm struggling with and randomly quits on me. So I think just the abbreviated version is we are doing town halls across our communities. We have 9 scheduled for August, 3 have been complete. We're hearing lots, community safety and pest control are some big issues we're hearing, but also really getting back to programming on site. Through the course of September and October, we'll hit some of the smaller sites and family sites that make it more difficult to engage because there's no community room. That type of approach won't work. So we'll find new, different methods for those communities, and we'll be responding back to each community to make sure that we tell them what we heard and what we're going to do about it, and that'll all feed into the strategic plan to help us guide what our initiatives and priorities are for 2022. We're really happy to be back speaking to tenants in such a collective way and hearing the issues that matter to them in such a passionate manner. It's really just helpful to really understand where they're at and what we should be doing for them. Recruitment is an ongoing issue. We're getting traction in some positions we struggled with, and we have about 10 competitions underway at different stages. So I think we're hoping to sort of reduce that number of open competitions as we enter into the fall. It's been pretty steady for us. We're happy with the new staff who joined. We're just looking for a few more. Hopefully that was better.
I can say it was a little better on my end. I'm not sure if it was much better for some other folks, but we'll soldier on as best we can. And certainly if folks have any questions for Paul on that, now's the time to get on the speakers list. Phil?
Yeah. Paul, one of the things I was really interested in when I looked at hiring was hiring legal staff. And I just wonder, is the purpose of that to have sort of everyday expertise in the legal area, but also to take on some of the role as lawyers do in other large groups of taking on some of the work that you've had to contract out to outside counsel? Or is it for a specific purpose? Is it for the labor area or something like that? I just wonder if you could give a little sort of clarity on that.
Okay, so I will start the answer, and if there's a follow-up question, Andrea will jump in. Our legal services coordinator work primarily on our LTB matters. So they support us through that process. And there's 3, 1 for each portfolio. So they're dealing with our late payment of rent, our non-payment of rent, and some of our social issues in our community. They also do other minor litigation. We still outsource legal advice through like HR lawyers and labor relations and those types of things, but these are primarily operational in the management of the business of providing housing.
Anything further, Mr. Squire?
No, I just wanted to understand what that role was in terms of the corporation. I think that explains it for me very well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Paul? Tammy?
Yes, through you, Chair, to Paul. So I have a question relating to the town halls and the information that will be brought back to the board. I'm wondering if that will be looked at in collaboration to the tenant surveys that went out in March. I do believe that that information was to come to the board as well. And it did cover some of those areas of security and different things like that. So I'm wondering if you're going to be looking at those surveys in conjunction with the information from the town hall when you bring that back to the board.
Through the chair, I do believe the surveys were the ones presented by managed through the Tenant Advisory Council. I have not seen the results of those, but the plan is to gather all the input that we can. So we'll look at all inputs we have from the tenants and layer in what we're seeing from community safety reports, what we're seeing for maintenance requests, and sort of try to take as holistic as possible approach. I will follow up on the report back from the Tenant Advisory Committee on their survey. I know they're off through the summer months and they've just gone through some recruitment. So I will make sure that we have that conversation through the fall so we get that information if it's available.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for Paul on his CEO report? Seeing none, we'll look for a motion to receive. Moved by Gary and seconded by Shelley. And we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. So moving on, the next item on the consent agenda is the vacancy management report. Again, this would fall to Paul. It was in your package. I'm not sure if anybody has any questions on it. Paul, was there anything you wanted to highlight before we went to questions or comments from the board?
I think the key point for me when reviewing this is that we're making progress against where we started in January. As expected, we had a little bit of a slowdown on the property services through the summer months. We have vacations and some things there. So we will be focusing on returning the number of units returned to rent ready. We're still targeting to be to our 3% target through early fall. So we'll keep pushing for that. For the board and specifically the new members, you'll notice that there's been a significant change in the age of units that are rent ready. There has been some staffing issues that have since been resolved. So we've been talking at our meetings about just we'll see an increase in the days it takes to rent and the number of units that are rent ready as we run through that capacity issue. We do have, we only had one of our tenant placement coordinators available. They did a fantastic job in trying to keep up, but it was not reasonable. So we supported them as best we can. So you'll see the number sort of rose from 35 in January to 67 in July. We expect that in the next few months, that number will significantly decrease. A reminder that the tenant services team has consistently been able to meet their target of 1% of units in their rent ready status and moving them in about 20 days or less. I think the number was actually end of last year, more like 17 or 18. So they have a good process. They have an efficient system. They were resource starved, and now they're back up to speed. So we expect to see that number return.
Great. Are there any questions or comments on the vacancy report? John.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I just had a couple thoughts, and I mean, I could have missed this when I reviewed it, but has there been any thought given, or is it possible to explore the idea of contracting some of the work out, like outsourcing some of it when there are those periods where there are people on vacation and the capacity to get the work done, to reduce the amount of vacancies in a quicker turnaround time? And then also wondering, is there some type of team sort of organized to focus on those instances mentioned in the report where there's just only a few days at the end of the month to get units prepared, so it's just not possible? Like, is there any thought given, or has it been explored to put together a team that would be able to kind of focus their efforts on that quick turnaround at the end of the month? Is that something that's possible, or is that beyond the realm of possibility?
All right, that's a lot. So in terms of contracting out, that's difficult. We're not able to do that. We have a unionized staff force under the collective agreement. We have brought in, so we do have staff that we pull from other areas internally and move them over. It was an unusual circumstance where we had two of the staff in tenant placement not available. And we were able to bring in like sort of a half a staff person in to support that. And we did post temporarily. And that just takes a little while to go through the HR process. And that took a number of weeks. So we do have a temporary person in supporting. And then it just there is, with the availability of staff, it sort of just took longer than we expected. So we do readjust internally where we can. It is not usual for us to contract out on internal staff, and we'll work with the union to sort of figure out how we can do this better. And sometimes it's overtime and other things. Just there where the volume was high, because at the exact same time, the property services team was actually pushing more volume than they had in a long time. So while they were doing really well, they sort of overwhelmed the tenant services team and their ability to actually ramp up. So it was sort of a good thing for one team, overwhelmed the other team. And the nature of the units coming available at the end of the month is just the timing of some of the vendors and just working through the targets. So we're really focused on getting named units done. So staff are really focusing, and it usually takes them, a few weeks to get that done. And then our vendors on the final painting or cleanup or things like that, their ability to get things done is limited as well, because they face the same staffing issues. So we're always looking at it, and we're, I think once we normalize our volumes, we won't have that big of an issue. But it is constantly a yin and yang from both teams to try to balance this out.
Did you have a follow-up, John?
Yeah, just quickly. Yeah, thank you, Paul, for that. Just thinking about then, is there an opportunity to start to think proactively, just in the future, of maybe training some of the staff to do some of the stuff that vendors are taking care of, or is that internal staff that are the vendors you're referring to? And wondering if there's a temporary pool of applicants that's available to pull from, that have already gone through the process, that we can kind of quickly pull from to fill vacancies on a temporary basis, to fill some of the gaps.
The nature of the sort of employment dynamics right now is we don't have a ready pool of applicants. So usually, so we have 2 vacant maintenance repair persons now. So that we're going to post, and we'll have to go through the full recruitment cycle. It's only like maybe after we run a few cycles that we end up with a candidate that we can call out from a past competition and bring in. So it's just the nature of the labor market is that these folks are not necessarily available, and offering temporary roles is not always desirable for folks, especially if you're asking them to switch employers and things like that. So it is a little complicated right now in the economy and the labor market to sort of be flexible. It's not necessarily an employer's market, is what we're finding. So we do look at things like that, and where we can reduce like an external posting because we have an extra internal candidate or someone left over from a competition that was good but just not the top at that one. We do try to take them in and bring them on.
Thanks, Paul. John, did you have anything else?
I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Paul.
All right. Thank you, John. I appreciate the questions.
And I should add, I'll just take this opportunity to add that as we go through these meetings, and for John, especially being new to the board, anytime you want to reach out to Paul with some follow-up questions after a meeting, he's always available to do those. So don't be shy about that, because he's happy to chat with any of us at any time. Phil, I saw your thumbs up going up. Was that a hand up or?
No, I want to put a hand up. Sorry, I was just probably hit the wrong button, but I did want to ask a question.